All right, the changes of the PGA Tour seem to be hitting us fast and furious right now, Mike, and we've got a bit of breaking news here, so we're going to dissect it. This just happened a few minutes ago, so we're still learning a lot as we go, but whether you want to call them designated events, elevated events, I mean, the big news, the big change to the PGA Tour schedule has been these events on the schedule with the huge payouts, the $20 million purses. Well, now what the PGA Tour has announced, and this was first reported by Golf Week earlier today, and since then all the major news outlets have picked it up and have confirmed it, which at least it's a confirmed bit of news, so it's not speculation. In 24, so not this year, there's no changes made this year, but for 24, according to these sources, the PGA Tour will be moving to a number of limited field, no-cut tournaments.
Really? Okay.
Now, you know why that raises eyebrows, right? What does that sound like?
LIV.
Yeah,
right.
It sounds a whole lot like
they have
LIV.
to compete.
Right. So the questions have been flying at PGA Tour representatives. Rory McIlroy actually just walked off. We just watched a interview that he did at the Arnold Palmer Invitational just a few moments ago. Of course, Rory, being a big champion of the PGA Tour, was going to get hit with questions. So we're going to talk in a second about how they're kind of responding to that. But the way it's looking is that there's going to be around 13 of these elevated or designated events in 24, right? And we've talked about this on the pod before. They're going to kind of switch year to year, which events are elevated and which are not. They have not yet said how many of those 13 are going to be these new no-cut limited fields. Okay. Right? But one thing that they did say specifically was that it was, actually, this was Rory had said this in his clarification kind of press conference that he gave, was that the invitational events, the one at Bay Hill like this week, Riviera, Muirfield Village, those will still retain a cut. So already we're seeing this number whittle down from 13 to maybe 10 or maybe even less. Now, the question we have is this really a story or is this not a story? Right. As we said before, the reason it at least seems like a story is because everyone's up in arms about LIV's limited field and no cuts and whether they should have official World Golf Rankings. But if you look at it through a little bit of a wider lens, the PGA Tour has had limited
quite
field,
a few of them,
no cut events. Yeah. WGC events, playoff events, FedEx Cup events.
Some of the off seasons, the Zozos.
Exactly. Zozo, CJ Cup. Now with the WGCs out of the picture, there might be a room to have a little bit more of these no-cut events. But the way they're looking is you'll have events on the schedule. What we know as of right now, you will have events on the schedule that'll have this 20 million or 20 million plus purse. Right. It'll have somewhere between 70 to 90 players, so a smaller field than what we're seeing, and no cut.
We don't know which ones are going to be no cut, though.
Well, you can look at the schedule of what will be the elevated or designated events. But
like the waste management.
Right, but the waste management is not next year.
So they're switching that next year.
Right, and I think the Honda is. Because now this year, remember the Honda, we just went over this. The Honda field kind of got criticized for being not a very strong field because it sat between some elevated events. So I think this might be the PGA Tour's response to not having certain events kind of fall off the schedule. But regardless, the number of total no-cut events have not yet been confirmed, and it hasn't been confirmed exactly what they mean with this elite field. Right? Yeah. So what does it take to qualify to get in? So what I'm reading and what I'm seeing initially is that things like top 50 in the world players, people who finished in the top, let's say 50 or so in the FedEx Cup points, but they're saying there'll be other ways to qualify your way in, but it will be a much more exclusive field. Now, why are they doing this? Well, according to like what Rory was saying was, if you're going to have these elevated events, right, with these huge purses. And as they kind of put it and use as example, if you're going to ask MasterCard to lay out $20 million for an event, for a purse, well, then you've got to be able to back that up with a very strong field. Right. So what they're saying is if you're going to have the best players playing all 4 days, it should naturally equate to the highest ratings. Sure. And as such, like your sponsors are going to like that and your fans are going to like that. However, I can't keep but think like it goes back to what LIV said. I mean, LIV originally designed it and they said, well, like, why are you doing no cuts? They're like, well, this way everybody gets the chance to see their favorite player even on the weekend. Right. Right. Well, now, like, which one is, informing which is leading which? Is this a reaction by the PGA Tour to LIV, or is this
No doubt.
You think that definitely?
Yeah, I think it was, and I wasn't in the closed room Tiger Woods meetings, but I got to think they said, hey guys, how can we create our own LIV on tour within the tour?
Right.
And kind of give our guys, because I think according to these new rules with these elevated events, all of the top caliber guys, I think they have to commit to a minimum number of events on tour. So it's like, hey guys, like, hey JT, hey Jordan, hey Morikawa, Xander.
Yeah.
You guys play in these 13 elevated events. 8 of them will have no cuts, and you play in the 4 majors. It's basically you're on LIV, in a way. In a way.
It's
but
like,
still on the
like,
PGA Tour.
And,
so that's our response.
And also, a lot of the guys who went to LIV, you heard them using the reason of saying that the tour schedule was too grueling. They didn't want to play 25 plus events a year. I think you could see your top tier guys who qualify for this playing in 14,
Just these.
15 events and the 4.
They're satisfying what they need to do. They're getting elevated payouts.
I could definitely see it happening. But, on the other side of the coin, the question that's going to be raised, right, is does this give more, more fuel to LIV's argument to be part of the official World Golf Rankings? Because don't forget, a huge part of why, the official golf world rankings has continued to deny LIV was because over this no cut thing.
Right.
They're saying that, it's exhibition because, you have a set field and you've got, a no cut event. Now also, they're also playing only 54 holes. That's part of it too. I get it. But it's certainly from a PR perspective, it doesn't look as good for the PGA Tour still having official World Golf Rankings and LIV not. I'd be curious to see what you guys think, so drop your comments below on that
What's
one.
so funny is that in order to make it into a WGC event, you had to be top 50 in the world to play in a no-cut event by the WGC.
Right.
It's too funny.
Yeah. Well, that's where we share some similarities here as far as what the rankings are going to have to be. But regardless, it's telling us that we're probably going to see in 24, we're probably going to see somewhere around 10 or so events with a huge purse and a limited field of 70 to 90 players with no cut.
Yeah.
And PGA Tour is going to spin it the way they want to spin it. LIV is going to spin it the way that they want to spin it. But in some ways, I get it. It does make sense that, like, look, we know that ratings are directly correlated to who's in the field, i.e. like Tiger effect.
Right.
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 But there's other guys people are going to tune in because the top stars are in the field. That translates to the money that's brought in through advertisers. It's a business at the end of the day.
Totally.
But the concern that I have is it seems to like go more towards as you limit the field. I think a large part of the storyline that I've always enjoyed with the PGA Tour was the up-and-comers, was the guys, any guy could win on Sunday, theoretically. Who could it be? And it could be a surprise name. We just saw last week Chris Kirk win for the first time in 8 years.
Right. What's interesting about that is with these elevated payouts, though, you think about like total winnings on tour stats. Like if Scotty Scheffler wins 20 more times in his career at $3.74 million a win, it's $80 million plus what he's a win. He could be $100 million winner on tour.
He could.
Because you know what I mean? It's crazy.
Well, we're only going to see those numbers going to go up.
Right.
They're going to continue to go astronomically higher, I'm sure. Now, one thing that people, with the question that kind of floated around, the one rumor that I'm seeing has been dispelled is that the players will not be part of this. The majors, of course, won't be. They're not part of the PGA Tour. But the Players Championship, if anything, is kind of like the Tour's major. It's the fifth major. Even though that will feature that higher payout, that will not become a no-cut event. In the same
I don't see how you could change the players. You know what I mean? But like, take a tournament like the Genesis. Like, does it put an asterisk on past winners if you have a no-cut event going forward? I mean, how's that work?
It's individual. Like I said, Riviera, they're not going to have. So the Invitational will not be part of this.
Okay.
So
got it.
So the only way I could kind of like extrapolate this out would be, I know next year it won't be, but let's say the year after, if the Waste Management becomes an elevated event and they make that a no-cut limited field event, that would be your perfect case point and example. It's like, what does that now look like for people? Yeah. And that's what I'm interested to see. Would you rather see a Waste Management with a guaranteed field of the top 50 at least, maybe 70 to round it out, and no cut. The guys play all the way through the weekend.
For the viewer, man, I got to think they want that limited field. More exciting golf on TV.
Yeah, well, that's where I think people are going to be split. People are going to want to see they don't want to have their favorite player cut and they're not playing on the weekend. Yep. But on the same token, the bigger field usually leads to more action. So that's all the information we have at the moment. I'm sure more stuff will continue to unravel. This just literally hit a few hours ago, but it just proves one thing. There's been more changes to the PGA Tour in the past year than there's been in as long as I can remember watching the game.
No, you're right.
And I'll tell you what, if that says one thing for us, is that if LIV's, and going back to originally to Phil Mickelson and his comments, if their goal was to apply pressure that creates change on the PGA Tour, you'd be hard to argue that LIV is not the driving factor that's creating all this change. Right. And it's a lot of change. So more yet to be seen. Make sure you subscribe. We'll continue to update you guys, but that's the information we have so far. Let us know what you think in the comments.